Welcome to the Business Leader Spotlight. The Business Leader Spotlight is bringing attention to those in our community making a difference in business. It is also an opportunity to identify the skills they have learned and applied to get where they are. And now, let us go into this week's interview.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Business Leader Spotlight. I'm your host, Mike Butler, and this week we have with us Chris Wolpert. Welcome to the show, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Chris, if you don't mind, can you share with the audience a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to recently?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like everybody else, I've been adjusting to the new world we live in COVID, and getting ready to, as we're recording this, wrap up the year 2020. Thank the Lord, right?
Yes.
But as far as what I've been up to professionally, I own a consulting agency, Group Benefit Solutions, or as we're known, GBS, out here in Steilacoom, Washington. And what our mission is and what our purpose is to eliminate employee out-of-pocket costs when they go in to visit the doctor, while simultaneously guiding them to the highest quality healthcare that's available to them.
Wow, that seems like that's a mouthful in and of itself. So with GBS, it sounds like you're an advocate on the employee side to work with them in the medical insurance and benefit process, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yep, that's exactly right. So, for a long time, people that have had a traditional kind of insurance or benefits brokerage, if you will, they kind of just focus on working with the HR team or the CFO or others in the C-suite, maybe the owner if it's a really small company or what have you. And what we really sought to do was to really engage with a group, but more or less really try to show what's happened throughout the process to employees. They've really been the ones that have been left behind in this discussion. They're the ones that have seen their deductibles and their out-of-pockets continue to rise. Mm-hmm. They're the one, and over the course of time, over the last 20 years or so, they've also seen their wages remain somewhat stagnant. So they've got those costs going up. They're not earning any more wages than they were before. And at this point where we're at now, Michael, is the overall health insurance package or the benefits package has become the second highest line item expense for a business, wow. Second only to labor. And maybe depending on the industry, there might be one above that. So, but it's usually the top two or top three, certainly, of line items on a company's or on any organization's budget. And so really what we've sought to do is put the employee back at the center of the discussion. Right. And the thing is, Michael, is that because we've got such an opaque, non-transparent system when it comes to accessing healthcare, by simply focusing on the quality metrics behind the doctors, the providers, the hospitals that people are going to, we can end up saving them money, those individual employees, which is what our mission is. But the downstream effect is that it also has an effect on the business or the organization itself in a very positive way. Wow,
that's very beneficial. I having a family myself and understanding those costs, and I'm pretty sure many listeners have that same kind of thought and understanding. We see how much it costs us to be able to go to the doctor and have medical insurance, but what's that multiplied effect on the business? And I can see where getting into that and being able to help the employer, because one, they want to be able to maintain a bottom line that is profitable, but also beneficial on both sides. And it offers this balance. And it sounds like there's this tightrope that you have to walk in this arena that is a little bit more regulated, I'll say, based on government controls and the like. Would you agree, or would you say that it's a little bit more, as you said, it's not an opaque process? Is it something that you've noticed that there are a lot of tightropes that you have to walk with this process?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I mean, it's the process itself is very similar to the fact that, look, at the end of the day, people just want to be able to go in and see the doctor, or if they've got some kind of catastrophic event, they want to know that they're covered. I mean, really, the insurance in and of itself is there to protect you against the unknown, right? Ultimately, that's what you're looking to do. But the problem is particularly with health insurance, it's really the only kind of insurance where you are at risk of going bankrupt if you use it. Right. So think about that for a second. You get in an auto accident, right? You get your car fixed, but it's annoying. It's unpleasant to deal with. But at the end of the day, you have no risk of going bankrupt because you got in a car accident, or a homeowner. If you've got a homeowner's claim, your house burns down. The insurance is going to come in and pay for that to be rebuilt and put you up in the meantime in a hotel, extended stay, what have you. But with health insurance, people are so afraid to use it, and the health insurance system is so opaque to engage with and try and figure out, okay, where do I go for a second opinion? My doctor's telling me that I can go to this place to have a scan done. Well, can I have that done somewhere else more effectively? Whether it's, can I get in there faster, or can I pay a smaller co-insurance amount or a smaller copay or what have you. So what our plans seek to do, and really what our mission is, and how the nuts and bolts of how we do that, is we're engaging with the individual members for when they have, whether it's your run-of-the-mill health needs, healthcare needs, or if it's something more catastrophic, these one-offs where you've got a surgery that you need to get in for, or you've got some kind of issue, you want to have some diagnostics or whatever. So what our team does is we can look at those recommendations that you've already received, perhaps the doctors that you're already going to, the providers, and those types of things, and provide you some second opinion data based on the quality of the scores of those doctors. Right. And then to take it a step even further is if we identify doctors that are either outside of the treatment path that you've already been prescribed, or outside of the recommendations that you've already had, but we've seen that they are the top quality providers, the top quality doctors, we make a recommendation that you go to one of those that's within our preferred set of doctors, providers, and hospitals. And if you do that, then you can get your out-of-pocket costs completely eliminated. No deductible, no co-pays, no co-insurance for any of those members that do engage. And then if they don't, of course, they can still continue to engage with the plan as they have in the past, right? Where you go in, you pay your deductible, or you pay a copay, just depending on what the level of needs are. But you can still engage with the plan in that way, and just not opt to use this enhancement that we've created.
Wow, it seems like you've created a system whereby people can take advantage of it and get that benefit of what health insurance is there to be able to provide, or what a lot of people think what health insurance is there to provide, because as you said, that it is one of the only things that if you use it, you could end up going broke with it, because those medical expenses continue and carry on. Now, to take a step back a moment, how did you get into being able to provide that benefit solution, and what made you come up with GBS?
Yeah, great question. So what initially started it? I've been in the insurance game, I guess we'll call it, since 2005, since I graduated from college. So number of different roles, number of different companies, large and small. And what I saw back in 2016, which is when I started GBS. What I noticed at the time was there was a big divergence. There was a big divergence in terms of what actually does create value for companies out there, and is there a more efficient or effective way to deliver this? And I always like to say this is like health insurance or healthcare the way it should be, right? Not this totally confusing and fragmented system that we've been left with over years and years and decades, really, at this point. But what I saw, and initially this started with the ACA passage and the Affordable Care Act, and when that came into effect, it really leveled the playing field. And suddenly, the guy that had been doing this for 30 years didn't have any more experience in dealing with ACA and kind of some of the new things that were created from that. Somebody that's been doing it for 30 years all of a sudden didn't have any more experience dealing with it than I did, who, was still relatively new to that side of the industry. And, and what I saw was just this rat race that we would get on each year with our clients. And so it was like, we'd bring them some quotes and they'd pick the least bad option and roll with that and just hope and pray it went well the next year. And it was just this constant cycle of giving them something that was just good enough, but it wasn't really anything. It was no longer a benefit. As I mentioned, when you've got these flat wages and you've got deductibles and out of pockets that are going sky high, it really, in effect, it was taking money away from the employees, because particularly those ones that had healthcare events or were fearful for healthcare events in the future, or somebody else that was on their plan, that be a spouse or kids or what have you. So that was really the genesis behind it, was that, I was looking at, I'll condense a very long story into a very short one, but essentially there was, I was working for an agency, and the plan was to acquire that agency that the owner was going to, ride off into the sunset and retire. And yet what I was noticing was there was no shift by him or by the rest of the staff to take these steps where we were going to be leveraging technology, and we were going to be looking at other partners than just simply going with the same carriers we've been using for decades and not producing any sort of real tangible result. And so kind of a number of things happened, the perfect storm, but it just kind of led me to the conclusion that, hey, it's going to be tough, particularly in the beginning, but I think I've got a different vision of how this ought to be. And there was plenty of other people across the country that were already putting solutions like that in place. And so I just chose to follow their example and to strike out on my own. And here we are.
Wow, that is one great taking that step, especially at that kind of that turning point with the Affordable Care Act coming in, and also being able to see that there's going to be this change, and the playing field had been leveled, and being able to, being in the industry enough to know, okay, everything is completely new. So your 30 years of experience doesn't trump my 10 years of experience. We all are understanding these things as we're going along. It's a learning on the job kind of process. And then to be able to take that and then in turn provide this benefit for employees, to be able to take advantage of what the insurance, the medical insurance is there for. So I applaud you for being able to foresee that. One of the things I wanted to touch on is you're an author as well.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about your book and just some of the different thoughts that you have in your book, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book, actually, I got it right here. The book is called Next Generation Healthcare. Mm-hmm. So for those that are viewing, you'll be able to see that on your screen here. And I wrote it a couple years ago with some of the other partners, some of the other people that have the same line of thinking that I do across the country, and are doing kind of the next generation of healthcare plans. And so I think there's 12 of us total. Anyways, everybody contributed a chapter, and it was a project that took several months to put together and then complete. And then we did a rollout of that. But yeah, so that was the book project we did. I want to say that came out in 2018, so about 2 years ago now from this recording. And yeah, it's been very well received. I think it's interesting because it's not just, what I say and my own kind of view of how how that market has changed and just how that our industry has changed in general. But I get the point of view of some of these people that have been doing it a lot longer than I have and then had to pivot and change, and some others that have done some really fantastic, innovative things to really help, push this forward and push this mission forward of eliminating employee out of pocket while guiding those employees to the highest quality care that's available. So the book gives a number of different strategies along those lines about how an HR team and how a CFO team, or just the team of decision makers at any given organization can start to think about how they can do things differently than just getting a bunch of quotes, having those put on a spreadsheet, and then picking the least bad option from that spreadsheet. There's certainly a better way to do it and to manage those expenses throughout the year. And that's a big piece of what has happened in the past. And that traditional brokerage model is where but the industry in general has told employers, look, there's nothing you can do to control healthcare costs. These costs are going to go up 10% a year. That's just medical trend. And there's things that we can do to, just to kind of move the money around to try and make it look like we're providing a better value. But in the end, they just simply don't. And then that has been shown through years and decades now of experience.
Wow. It seems like I'm catching a theme of what your picture, I guess, what you're seeing, and I think you've mentioned it a couple of different times in what the mission of GBS is being able to provide. And please, I'm not going to say this 100% accurately, so forgive me ahead of time, but being able to provide that experience for employees where medical insurance isn't, I'll say, the big scary monster under the bed, so to speak, and being able to take that step, because the insurance industry and then medical insurance industry is or has been a big monster for people for years. It had to be. It sounds like there were points where you had to take some steps of courage, or just being very courageous to go down this road and to be able to attack that kind of that entrenched mindsets and the entrenched ways of doing things. Can you talk a little bit about how you were able to overcome those types of things?
Yeah, some of it I think is just simply patience, right? I mean, as much as you or I know as an entrepreneur, like, we've got a great idea, and then you have to somehow communicate that and convince other people and persuade them and have them see the same vision. So yes, that is difficult to do, and what I found is that again, another thing that I think that a lot of people traditionally in my industry don't do a good job of is marketing. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean, because I think when they think of marketing, to them, that means picking up the phone and cold calling. It means, sponsoring a golf hole at some charity event, or sponsoring a table at a Chamber of Commerce luncheon, and that's marketing to them. Right. To me, what marketing is really it's delivering your message to the market with no expectation or no direct sales approach or anything like that. It's just simply, as I've said a few times, it's, look, what our main value proposition or what our marketing message is simply to eliminate your employees out of pocket while guiding them to the highest quality healthcare. And so, having repeated that now over the course of several years, yes, it has finally started to sink in, but I've supplemented that in a number of different ways. And I think what, the thing that you want to talk about is the Friday fables. And so that has certainly been something that I've done, via LinkedIn, using video, using kind of these new modern mediums that we now have available between, LinkedIn and video and social media and all these types of things, as a way to get that message out on a consistent basis, where the Friday Fable things I'm referring to it's a video series that I've done on LinkedIn and on Facebook, where basically I take an Aesop's fable, tell that story. A lot of us have heard these stories, or if we haven't heard those stories in a long time, then we've certainly heard those. We've heard the morals, slow and steady wins the race, look before you leap. Things like, what's another one? Necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, I could go on and on with the lessons behind these morals and the stories before them. And then basically what I do is I take the story, the moral, and then I apply that to today and how people are accessing or managing their health insurance purchase decisions at their organization now, and I relate that back to the moral and the lesson that's outlined in the fable. And that has really been that's been a way to really build a brand and really kind of build this name that, okay, kind of like what you're saying is like, I don't know if I can really regurgitate this the same way you said it, but I understand the what you're trying to communicate here. And that has been a way to really cut through and use stories, because as human beings, we all identify with stories, really easily, just on a psychological intrinsic basis, right? We know and understand the value of storytelling. But then to have that relate back to the problem that we're facing today in a very real way, that's really helped kind of cut down some of that time that it takes to communicate that message that, again, it's like, okay, I understand kind of sort of what this guy is saying. He's an insurance broker and yet he's not. And so anyway, my point is that it stimulates a discussion, which is really, again, what marketing is meant to do is stimulate that discussion and get people to pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to understand more. I want to know more. So.
Okay. So yeah, you did get to the Friday Fables. I guess one of my questions about them is, do you have a favorite one that you've done up to this point?
Oh man. Geez, it's like asking me if I've got a favorite child. No. I think the one that I told a lot this year, and I think it was because of COVID, and frankly, because a lot of the message that I've had over the last couple of years is finally starting to resonate now, and some of that is because of COVID too, and so we can get into that and talk about that a little bit too, but that might be a whole nother podcast conversation. So my favorite one that I've told over and over this year is The Crow and the Pitcher. Have you heard The Crow and the Pitcher?
It's familiar in name, but I don't remember the details of it.
Okay. Well, I'll share it anyway. So there's a crow who's been flying around all day. He's getting really thirsty and he needs to stop and get a drink. So he's looking for a place to stop and get a drink and can't find anywhere. Well, finally, on the backside of this house, he spots a little garden. And on a table in this garden is a little pitcher of water. And so he swoops down and he says, all right, here's my chance. I'm going to wet my beak. I'm going to get this drink. I'll be, this will be great. So he flies down onto this table next to the pitcher, sticks his beak in, and he can't reach the water. He can't quench his thirst. So he's kind of looking around thinking, okay, well, there's got to be something else. There's something else here. I can still get a drink of water somehow. So he's looking around. He can't find anything. And then suddenly he gets an idea. And what he does is he goes to the garden and picks up a rock. And then he brings it back up and he drops that in the pitcher. And then he goes back and he gets another rock and he drops it in the pitcher. And he does this over and over and over. And eventually he's filled up this pitcher with rocks. Well, what it's also done is it's raised the water level to now he can dip his beak in and get that, he can quench his thirst. He can finally get that drink of water he's been after. And so the moral to the story is necessity is the mother of invention. So that, I think, what I've seen in 2020 is, everybody has had to adapt, just like this crow. And so there are going to be some there are some people out there that they're trying to dip their beak into the water. They can't reach it. But then they just give up. They do something else, whatever it is, but they don't take that initiative to say, look, I'm going to solve a problem here, and then go pick up these pebbles and drop them in. So that's been a favorite of mine. I mean, there's a lot of great ones out there, but that is definitely one that I think really kind of sums up this year for myself, and I'm sure for a lot of other people out there too.
Oh, I think, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one, being that necessity is the mother of invention, or just the idea of creative thought, because not to go in deep into the fable itself, but he had to think differently than he would have normally, because just like you said, a crow being able to use their beak to get water is natural.
Yep.
But he had to use his beak to do something else, and then it could go back to the natural process, and or things get back to normal, so to speak. So that does speak very much to this year and what people have had to do and be able to adjust and switch. Now, prior to us getting online and recording this interview, we touched on this briefly, is how you got started with the Friday Fables. Do you mind going back over that and sharing with the audience some of the, the history of how you came up with the Friday Fables?
Yeah, no, not at all. And well, I think that the crow in the picture is a good, a good analogy or a good story to illustrate that point too. But what had happened was a couple years ago, there was a mentor of mine that used a fable to illustrate a point. And it was something that resonated with me so much. And I was just like, oh my gosh, that is so clever, the way that you can take just such a short little story, that takes a minute or two to tell, and then relate it back to, he did basically what I've done in the Friday Fables. Well, during that same time, and of course I've got kids, I know you've got some young kids too. And, so I've, read some of these stories to them and, and that type of thing. But what had happened during the same time that this mentor of mine used this story, my oldest daughter was was in the drama club at her elementary school. Mm-hmm. And the end of the session or end of the year play they did was a play about Aesop's Fables. They kind of combined a number of them, had, 2 or 3 narrators. And anyways, it was this whole play where they used all these stories and kind of weaved them together. And so those two things in conjunction kind of made me think, you know what, this is something, I can do this. This is something that I can make this I can make this a regular series. And so that was how I started doing it. Was I just did a couple of them. I released them on Fridays and kind of did this whole Friday Fable thing, thinking 2 things. One is that people would kind of get in the habit of seeing these all the time, but it would also, there's like an internal accountability system that now it's like, I'm expecting myself to produce these things and have them, ready to go on a weekly basis. And so that's what really kicked it off, was kind of seeing that. But then, it was like, I ordered a couple of Aesop's Fables books on Amazon, had those come in. I've got my notes in the margins and all that, like trying to figure out which ones I could use and what the parallel would be and all those kinds of things. And so, took a lot of planning. It took me a couple months to really actually put all this in place and start to do it. But now that I have, it's been about a year and a half now that I've been able to churn these out. And I still have a bunch more to, that are waiting in the wings, scripts that are written, and I just need to record them and get them put out there. But that's and the thing that I wanted to do was 2 things. One is have this like regular series, something that I could have that I could keep going back to, and 2, make the videos relevant and short. So our attention spans are you're not going to watch a video that's 3 minutes long, but if it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, you'll probably do it. Right. So anyway, so that was the other thought, was that I needed to have something that would engage people very quickly, have a good point, and be somewhat memorable. And the funny thing is too, I was telling you before, Michael, is that, I go to industry conferences and, all these things now, and there's been times where people will say, oh, wait, I know you. I've seen you on LinkedIn. You're the guy that does the fables. So, you kind of, even though I kind of stumbled on this on accident, you can still, very easily and quickly begin to build a brand for yourself that people can then associate. And so, and it's happened even at local events too, prior to COVID and all that, of course, where I would have somebody come up to me at some event and say, hey, I've seen the videos you're doing. And these are people that are not necessarily commenting, liking, whatever, but there are people that are taking notice when you're marketing yourself online and when you're using all these different mediums that we have available to us today. So
definitely. And so it sounds like you've gotten, or you've created for yourself a labor of love to some degree, of in terms of you talked about the consistency piece of, okay, I've put it out there, I have to do this on Friday, every Friday, and then having to do the work and put the scripts together to be able to record a concise, succinct 2-minute and 30-second video, because it takes a lot to really be able to condense those things down. So have you, with all of the work that you did to create that, have you noticed any, I'll say, offshoots or changes that have come from just your working on being able to create the Friday Fables to how it's benefiting you in other areas?
Well, let's see. So, I mean, the fables are a way of branding and marketing. And so, it's another thing I heard somebody say one time that really stuck with me, is that you're never going to make, especially in my industry, you're not going to make money off of social media, but you're going to make money because of social media. So, and I'm not sure I completely understood the premise of your question, but I haven't had anybody, immediately reach out to me and say, okay, we're ready to work with you now. It's kind of a longer process and, that type of thing. But I look at it one of the things I look at it as, when I first got into the industry years and years ago, the rule of thumb at the time was that you needed to make 7 touches or 7 contacts with somebody before they would buy from you. Mm-hmm. Well, a more recent statistic that I've heard is that it's actually more like 20 to 21, 22 times that you need to contact or connect with somebody before they'll do business with you. So I see that as, if somebody, opens an email from me one week, watches my Friday Fable the next week, I'm cold calling them the week after, that's 3 touches right there. So, and we're also doing mailer campaigns. I mean, we're doing a number of other things to quote unquote touch people. And that's just one way that we go about doing that. But, another thing that people ask me sometimes is, it's like, how do you know when this is working, right? So you're doing all this, you're shooting these videos, all these how do you know when this is working? And I'll tell you, for me, there was kind of two things that I saw that made me think I was on the right track. One was my buddies started giving me a hard time, so my buddies are like, oh yeah, I saw your video, because they're not used to seeing that, right? So if you've never done it before, you're just starting to market and brand yourself, you've got to have a message. And so that was part of it. So my buddies giving me a hard time, that was number one. And then the second thing was the first time that I had a troll. So the first time that I had somebody who I've never met before, never seen before, got on one of my videos on LinkedIn and started telling me why I was wrong for this reason or that reason or another. And it was, so those 2 things, which seem counterintuitive, right? Because you'd think it would be this person that reaches out and says, hey, I want to set a meeting with you, or I want to work with you, or whatever. But to me, it's almost to have that was almost a little more validating, because if because it could have been, I would have just let my buddies give me a hard time and then, all right, well, I guess I won't do this anymore because I'll look stupid. Or to have, some troll get on and be like, all right, well, I'm going to offend somebody, so I guess I shouldn't say anything ever again, right? Those are things that I think really that, you're when you're telling a story, when you're making that connection, you're going to elicit some kind of emotional response. And that's what you need in order for somebody to buy. You need them to buy emotionally, not logically. So for somebody to understand the nuts and bolts of how health insurance works and, this and that and the other, like that's never going to get someone across the finish line. But if they're emotionally connected and saying, look, I need to keep my people, right? I need to do whatever I can to keep these certain core people at my organization. If I can give them a plan that eliminates their out-of-pocket costs, that's going to go a long way. And it's going to make those dollars that I invest in the benefits plan that much more valuable, because they're actually getting a benefit, a perceived benefit now, versus just having, getting a higher deductible and higher copay and co-insurance and all that. So, anyways, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of started rambling there, but hopefully that kind of answered the question.
It goes down part of the way. I was more specifically just the process of having to create it. What has it done for you personally that's just that you've seen in terms of the process of creating the videos? What has that done, made changes for you personally, or what have you seen come from it from that side?
Yeah, well, I can tell you that it's made me tremendously more confident. It's given me a chance to really hone my message, because when I'm shooting a video, typically what I do is the video itself, when it's all finished, it'll be about a minute and a half, 2 minutes and 30 seconds, somewhere, 2.5 minutes or less, basically, is usually what it is. But to do that requires about 10 minutes of actual recording. And I don't stop and start the recorder. I just let it play, and I'll go through about 2 or 3 takes of each sentence, or each, I'll do the story, do maybe 1 or 2 takes of that, do the moral, that, maybe 1 or 2 takes of that. And then basically what my lesson is, and I'll do a couple of takes of that as well. So it's really been it's given me a chance to practice that, the points that I want to make. It's given me a chance to practice delivering that message. And then what somebody actually ends up seeing when they watch that video is they see a very concise message, and they're getting the best version of it from me, right? Because I think, as we do this, you record things and you kind of look at it and say, well, I don't know if I like that phrasing. I think it's a little too ambiguous, whatever the case is, or maybe there's a different way I can communicate that. And so from that standpoint, it's done a tremendous amount to increase my confidence. And then also too is that I've also learned a lot about video editing. It's not quite as difficult as you might imagine. I've learned a lot about just simply how to put this together. What to think about when thinking about a marketing message, and if I wanted to do a longer term campaign that might have more a 2 or 3 part in a series or that type of thing. So I've kind of played a little bit with that, but it's really gotten me to, I think, to move out of my comfort zone and move into something that seems very daunting, and that is really not quite as difficult as I think we make it in our minds. And then also it's really caused me to lean on some of my partners and some of my staff and some of my vendors to say, hey, I've got this going on. I want to incorporate this with what we're doing. And so I'm getting other people's input on stories, on editing, on adding headers, footers, captions, what have you. But, there's a number of people in different roles that kind of look at that and then offer, hey, here's how I would think about that, or here's another way you could do it. And so, it's I think overall the biggest thing though really has been the confidence and just delivering that message.
Okay. I can imagine just that creative process of having to come up with that consistently, how that would increase your confidence leaps and bounds, as well as having to deal with the ribbing of your friends, and then the occasional troll that comes out and is like, oh yes, I just want to disagree with you for whatever the reason behind it is, but having that, it can help you, remind you of the fact that, hey, it's getting somewhere now. Do we always like how it gets there? Not necessarily, but it is getting out there. So that's a good understanding and being able to find in the process of creating something that there are going to be the difficulties, the detractors, and even just the friendly ribbing of the friends, because I know dealing with some of my friends, they look at it and they're like, they usually do it to me because they're like, oh wow, he took the step to do it. So I'm pretty sure there's probably a similar piece that goes behind it with your friends as well. I want to again thank you for joining us this week on the Business Leader Spotlight. I appreciate all of the valuable input and just learning more about how with GBS you're being able to provide the employees that opportunity to be able to really get the full experience and the full benefit of their medical insurance. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we go today?
No, I don't think so. Really appreciate having a chance to come on here with you. And no, I think the only other thing I guess would be if people do want to track me down, certainly you can do that Our website for GBS is www.gbsbenefitsgroup.com. So that's a good way to get in touch with us, certainly that way. Again, I'm pretty active. I would say probably most active on social media wise on LinkedIn. So that would be a great place for us to connect. And that way also be able to see our Friday Fables that we're putting out each week as well. So.
All righty. Well, I want to say thank you to the audience and everybody who has joined us. And again, a big thank you to Chris for coming on the show this week. I appreciate everyone's tuning in, and join us again next week. Thank you. Thank you for watching this week's video. I hope you were able to find one thing you can begin to apply to your life today. I would appreciate it if you would like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you have any feedback, leave it in the comments below. Let us know if you know of any great guests to be on the spotlight. I look forward to your questions and your comments. Thanks again for watching.